Throughout history, warfare has been a brutal force, often marked by violence that transcends the battlefield. In the ancient world, some acts of war were so ruthless they'd be deemed war crimes today. These actions left a lasting legacy, not just for the victims, but also for the societies that committed them. In this journey through history, we'll explore how rulers wielded power and fear without mercy. These are tales of total destruction, unimaginable torture, and ruthless domination. The Assyrian Empire, ruling much of Mesopotamia from the 10th to the 7th centuries BCE, is infamous for its ruthless brutality. The Assyrians used extreme violence not just for conquest, but as a tool of psychological warfare, instilling fear across the ancient Near East. Their armies were known not only for military skill, but also for horrific cruelty toward captives. Assyrian kings like Ashurnasirpal II and Tiglath-Pileser III proudly documented their terrifying deeds. They described the torture and mutilation of enemies, including the gruesome practice of flaying captives alive and displaying their skins on city walls. In some cases, prisoners were impaled on spikes and left to die in agony, a chilling warning to those who might resist. The historian Diodorus Siculus, in his Bibliotheca Historica, recounts how the Assyrians often amputated the limbs of captives, leaving them to die slowly as a grim spectacle. Rebellious cities faced mass executions, with thousands beheaded or burned alive. This reign of terror persisted for centuries, but ultimately, their cruelty fueled their downfall. By the 7th century BCE, the Assyrians had made too many enemies. A coalition of Babylonians, Medes, and Scythians brought the empire to a violent end by sacking the capital of Nineveh. The Mongol Empire, under the leadership of Genghis Khan, was notorious for its mass executions and terrifying tactics that spread fear across Asia and Europe. Beyond their relentless military campaigns, the Mongols also engaged in early forms of biological warfare. During the 1346 siege of the Crimean city of Kaffa, held by the Genoese, the Mongols, led by a descendant of Genghis Khan, used diseased corpses as weapons. When the siege reached a stalemate, they catapulted plague-ridden bodies into the city. Many historians believe this act contributed to the spread of the Black Death, which would go on to kill millions across Europe and Asia. Another brutal episode occurred in 1221 CE, when the Mongols captured Nishapur in modern-day Iran. Following the death of one of Genghis Khan's sons-in-law during a rebellion, he ordered the entire population slaughtered. Persian historian Juvayni recorded that every man, woman, and child was killed, with death toll estimates reaching 1.7 million. The city was reduced to a pile of corpses, shocking the medieval world. Genghis Khan and his generals, including his grandson Hulagu Khan, employed similar tactics across Central Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. Cities that resisted were often razed, with inhabitants either massacred or enslaved. Alongside these brutal military campaigns, the Mongol conquests were also marked by widespread sexual exploitation. Genghis Khan fathered hundreds, if not thousands, of children during his campaigns, a practice mirrored by his generals and soldiers. Historian Juvayni noted that after the fall of cities like Nishapur and Merv, Mongol soldiers took surviving women as war prizes. Genghis Khan's personal role in this exploitation was significant. Today, it's estimated that as many as 16 million people are direct descendants of his brutal campaigns of conquest and destruction. Carthage, once a vibrant hub of trade and culture along North Africa's coast, had long been Rome's fierce rival. Throughout the Punic Wars, the two powers clashed for control over the Mediterranean. By the time of the Third Punic War, 149 to 146 BCE, Rome, under the urging of Cato the Elder, was determined to erase Carthage from existence, famously declaring, "Carthago delenda est," Carthage must be destroyed. After a brutal 3-year siege, Roman forces breached Carthage's walls in 146 BCE, unleashing a wave of destruction. Ancient historian Polybius reported that Roman soldiers massacred hundreds of thousands of Carthaginian civilians. Out of approximately 700,000 inhabitants, only 50,000 survived, and they were enslaved and scattered across the Roman Empire. The Romans then leveled the city, ensuring no remnants of its former glory remained. Polybius, who witnessed the aftermath, described the scene as one of the most haunting he had ever seen, buildings reduced to ashes and streets filled with corpses. Another historian, Appian, recounted the ruthless slaughter of the remaining defenders, many of whom were unarmed civilians. The Romans spared no one, not even women, children, or the elderly. The destruction of Carthage was not merely an act of war. It was a calculated effort to erase an entire civilization. In 332 BCE, as Alexander the Great swept through the Persian Empire, he faced one of his toughest challenges yet, the fortified island city of Tyre, known as the Queen of the Seas. Tyre symbolized wealth and power, with walls and a navy that had withstood sieges for centuries. But when its leaders refused to surrender, they unknowingly sealed their fate. Determined to conquer Tyre, Alexander devised a bold strategy that shocked the ancient world. Unable to attack by sea, he ordered his forces to build a colossal causeway from the mainland to the island, essentially creating a land bridge. This monumental engineering feat took months, with the Tyrians fiercely resisting at every step. Once Alexander's troops finally breached the city walls, they unleashed a brutal assault. The Macedonians slaughtered over 6,000 Tyrians, and Alexander made a chilling statement by crucifying 2,000 survivors along the shore. Historian Quintus Curtius Rufus noted that these executions weren't just punishment. They were meant to terrorize other cities into submission. The remaining 30,000 inhabitants, mostly women and children, were sold into slavery, bringing Tyre's defiance to a devastating end. The Viking Age, spanning from the late 8th to the early 11th centuries, is often remembered for the Norsemen's daring seafaring raids across Europe. However, beneath their reputation as explorers and traders lies a darker legacy of ruthless destruction. The Vikings were notorious for their brutal raids, especially against monasteries and coastal settlements in England, Ireland, and France. One of their most infamous attacks took place in 793 CE, when Norse warriors sacked the monastery of Lindisfarne in Northumbria, England. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle calls it a great slaughter, describing how the invaders showed no mercy, killing monks, looting treasures, and setting sacred sites ablaze. This marked the beginning of a relentless wave of Viking raids that would terrorize Europe for centuries. These raids were swift, shocking, and ferocious. Entire villages were often wiped out, survivors either taken as slaves or left to rebuild from ruins. For the Vikings, raiding wasn't just about acquiring wealth. It was about instilling fear and asserting dominance. For centuries, they left a legacy of awe and dread, turning the ancient world into their stage of terror. Some of history's most horrifying war crimes reshaped their eras and left lasting legacies of suffering and terror. These ancient acts of brutality serve as stark reminders of the consequences of unchecked power and the depths of human cruelty. By reflecting on these dark chapters, we can better understand the value of compassion, justice, and human dignity today. If this exploration of ancient war crimes captivated you, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story from the darker side of history.